From out of the west, in a cloud of dust, a thunder of hooves, and a mighty...
Great Scott.
I know, this is heavy.
I wish I was watching that movie. Really, I do. Even if you don't like that movie, it's a lot better than... The Lone Ranger. This movie is bad. How bad is it? The best character in the movie is Silver, and he's a horse. But something about Silver's lassie-like antics that borderline on him being practically sentient, I find them all hilarious for some reason. And it's all downhill from there. So, without any further ado, a welcome to Short and to the Point, where I review movies in 5 minutes or less, or your money back. This movie easily could have been called Pirates of the Caribbean, the Western. Johnny Depp acts more like Captain Jack Sparrow than Tonto from the original series. Now granted, there was not a whole lot to Tonto's character then, but it's a lot more dignified than this performance. Okay, I take it back. The performance is not bad, it's just the character. Tonto is way too overplayed in this movie, almost to the point where you would think that the Lone Ranger is supposed to be the sidekick. It's not helped that he's billed above Armie Hammer, who plays our hero, and I use that term loosely. I mean, he's likable enough in the performance, but he never feels like the Lone Ranger. He just feels like a man, not a legend. They aren't the characters we know and love, and they do not work as reinventions either. They just come across as unintentional self-parody. Okay, there was a lot of self-parody in Star Trek 2009, but the self-parody didn't detract from our heroes, and when the movie ended, we believed our heroes had grown up. We believed that they could live up to the names that they had established in previous canon. But by the time this movie ends, it doesn't feel like we've gotten anywhere. The Lone Ranger and Tonto don't feel like people whose names would instill hope in the feelings of the hopeless. It just feels like people that just adopted the names, not the actual people. And it's not helped that the movie takes so long to make the Lone Ranger into who he is. Sure, he puts the mask on early in the movie, but he doesn't embrace the character. In fact, he casts it aside. I'm pretty sure other movies have done that, but it's not long. This takes almost forever, and this movie is 2 hours and 29 minutes long, okay? So we are going to sit through a lot of self-doubt and the Lone Ranger just not being the Lone Ranger. Okay. And another really big disappointing factor in the movie is that this movie is told from old Tonto's perspective. Yes, when the movie starts off, it's 1933, and Tonto is a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs at this point, because, well, he's 90-something now, and he's telling the story of the Lone Ranger to a kid. Why did they feel the need to do that? There's no payoff from this. Sure, there's a small, nice tidbit with the kid at the end of the story, but they easily could have just started at the beginning of the film. And that kind of kills most of the suspense if we know Tonto is going to make it out alive. And the way he tells this story, it could have worked, I'll admit, but the kid only calls the Tonto out a few times, and not during the more ridiculous aspects of the story, such as when Silver somehow manages to climb up a tree, or when these evil killer bunnies somehow show up. Yeah, I know. Killer bunnies. They somehow grow sharp fangs and nature's supposed to be out of bounds. Ugh, it's so stupid. The villains never made much of an impression on me despite one or two clever moments, such as the plot dealing with the Indians breaking the treaty between them and settlers, but there's not much of a payoff. And the final confrontation between our heroes and the villains just feels anticlimactic, despite there being fair bit of action going on. And for a self-proclaimed action junkie like me to say that a movie has boring action sequences, that is saying a lot. Overall, this is one of my least favorite movies, up there with Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, The Spirit, and Green Lantern. Sure, the 1950s series was cheesy, but it still had a lot of charm to it and was enjoyable in its own right. This movie, you would think would be spectacular with the budget it has, but it's just wasted. And when our heroes actually act like their original incarnations, it feels more like a light switch and not because of actual character development. It's just wasted potential. If you really want to see this movie, go wait for it to come out on HBO. and if you must see it in theaters, then approach with extreme caution. You've been warned. This has been short and to the point, and I review movies in 5 minutes or less, or your money back. Join me next time for when we see what happens when you take the plot of Air Force One and set it on land.
All right, Deputy. There's gonna be a sneak preview, and the sneaks ain't gonna like it. I'm gonna clean up this one-horse town. Hi-ho, tinfoil!